Welcome. Please welcome us to the Washington County Historical Society's, this is our 19th oral history interview. Today we are interviewing LaRue Dannelly from Enterprise, Utah, and we're excited to have her here with us today. So let's get started, and my name is Lauren Webb. I'm the oral history coordinator, and like I said, I just enjoy having her here with us today. And so tell us, LaRue, what is your full name?
LaRue Hunt Dannelly.
Okay, and would you please say the day, month, and year of this interview?
Today is the 29th of April, 2025.
Thank you. Okay, and where and when were you born?
I was born in my grandmother's northeast bedroom in Enterprise, delivered by Mary Holt, a midwife, and that's where I spent most of my life.
Okay. And who else was in your family?
I have an older brother, Lauren, who is deceased, sister, Alva, who is also deceased, myself. My younger brother Jay just died, and I have a younger sister, Zola.
Okay. What were your parents' names?
Edward L. Hunt and Alvaretta Jones Hunt.
Okay. And what type of work did they do?
My father was a farmer, school teacher, rancher.
In Enterprise?
In Enterprise.
Okay.
My mother was a housewife. She did work in the potatoes and various other places. She was a very ambitious woman.
Okay. And did other family members live nearby?
Oh, my father was one of 15, and most of his brothers lived in the general area.
Okay.
Brothers and sisters.
Well, tell me about them. Are there any that stand out?
One of the things he told me about his mother, Aluna Terry Hunt, was that when she had 10 sons, and he was the 10th one, and he was the tithing baby, is what they called him. But anyway, he said that he remembered while my grandfather was working on the reservoir and they were living in the caves up by Grassy Creek, that for the summer that she would sit in her rocking chair and he would swear she was asleep, but she was always knitting socks for her sons. She could turn a heel without waking up.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so how did your parents meet?
I think my father was my mother's school teacher. He lost his job because he married her.
He lost his job
because he
married her?
He lost his job at teaching, and they didn't let him back into teaching until World War II, when the crunch on teachers was so hard, and they asked him to come back, and he taught then.
Okay, so what did he do for a living after they got married then?
He was a farmer and a rancher. He had cattle, and he farmed a 40-acre farm in Enterprise.
Okay, and what crops did he raise?
Potatoes, alfalfa, barley, oats.
What did your community look like outside of your family?
When I was growing up, I remember there was rabbit brush up and down the streets on the lane to the three-block walk I had to my grandparents' house. I remember that the roads were dirt, and we had trees along all of the Main Street in Enterprise. It was a shady Main Street, big cottonwood trees.
Okay. Tell us about your rural farm ranch location. Anything else that stands out?
We lived in town, but my father had a farm that was just over the Iron County line, 4 miles from town. And then he ran cattle west of Enterprise out in Nevada and Utah.
Where did your ancestors come from?
Well, I think the Hunts have been here ever since just about everybody. One interesting point of the Hunts is they joined the Fitzhugh Randolph family, and they were the people who instituted Princeton University. They carried the charter.
Oh.
So that was an interesting, but my father's side of the family had been here for many years. The Pulsfors fought in the Revolutionary War, and the Terrys, they were later. But my mother's side were from the South, a lot of them, the Robinsons and the Butlers, and then the Jones, who were later immigrants from England and came to Iron County to work in the ironworks. They were from Wales and
Okay.
England area.
So when did they come to the United States approximately? Any?
I would guess the Hunts were in the 1700s.
Okay.
And the Butlers probably about the same, the Robinsons about the same.
And where did they first settle?
The Hunts were in Kentucky for the most part. The Pulsfors were in Massachusetts, and the Robinsons were in Kentucky, almost in Tennessee, and the Skanes, which was in Tennessee. So they've been in America for a long time.
Okay. Did your family name change when your family immigrated to the United States, or did it stay the same?
I think our names all stayed the same. Interestingly enough, my husband's didn't.
Okay.
The Dannelly name is one that has been changed many times. We have followed it, and it's D-A-N-L-E-Y, D-O-N-L-E-Y, and D-A-N-N-E-L-Y.
Gosh, wow.
Many changes.
And are there any of their traditions still carried on today?
I really don't believe so.
Okay.
I think we've been Americanized for so long, we've made our own traditions.
Describe your grammar school and high school years.
In Enterprise, I started to school, and there was the first and second grade, and Bessie Snow taught us.
Bessie Snow from St. George.
Yes, from
Okay.
St. George taught us. I remember Miss Tilly Windsor, too, very well. She came and told stories, and we loved her. She came from St. George to tell us stories. And all of the elementary, when I was going to school, was the first and second were together, third and fourth, and fifth and sixth. And then we went up to the high school, and it was pretty well mixed.
Did you have any other influential teachers?
Oh, yes. I had Fern Reeves, who was an outstanding teacher. She really influenced my life. And then one of my college professors, David Lee, was a very great mentor of mine for the English world.
Okay. What were your hobbies and interests as a child?
Riding horses.
Yeah.
Helping my dad on the farm. I was a tomboy.
What kind
climbing
of horses?
trees.
What kind of horses did you ride?
Well, the one I
quarter
had
horses?
was half Arabian, half Mustang. And she was a great horse, but I didn't have a saddle. We couldn't afford a saddle for me, so I rode bareback. And I was dumped as often as I,
As
2
you
or 3
rode.
times a day.
Okay. Did you read much, and if so, what topics did you read about?
My
that you
family
liked?
were great readers. Interestingly enough, my grandfather, who was a graduate from the University of Utah and mayor of Enterprise for many years, 20 years, by the way, not consecutive. But anyway, he came to St. George and would get a big wooden box of books from the Washington County Library System, take them to Enterprise, and he acted as the librarian to everybody in Enterprise. And I couldn't wait to get in those boxes. They were just treasure troves. I remember that so well.
Okay.
We read a lot. When we canned, someone read while the rest of us worked. Reading was very important in my
Okay.
life.
Did you belong to any influential clubs or organizations in high school or junior
Well,
high?
I belonged to the FHA, and I was senior
Future
class
Homemakers
president.
of America?
Future Homemakers of America.
Okay.
And I really didn't. We didn't have any other clubs. I mean,
What about Future Farmers of America?
they had that for the boys.
Okay. Education-wise, did you attend college or university? And if so,
yes.
what was your major or minor, if any?
I went first to the University of Utah, and I was going to go out in nutrition. And then I got married. And when I was 29, I had cancer and knew I would have no more family. And so I knew I needed to do something, so I went back to school at SUU. And then I got my BS from there and my master's from Utah State, and I have about 90 semester hours above my master's.
Okay, so what was your major? And
My
did you-
major was English. My minor was accounting.
Okay, so let's go back to when you first started. What year did you start, and did you get one semester in and then got married?
I started in 1952, and I got 2 semesters in. Then I met my husband that summer, and we married. And I went to the farm with him in Nebraska, and we raised children. First, we were in the Air Force. It was during the Korean conflict. And then when he got out of the Air Force, we went to Nebraska for 2 years, dried out totally. And in Nebraska, you didn't irrigate at that time. And so we came back to Utah because there was no work. Everybody had dried out, and they were all looking for work in Nebraska, and there was no work in Nebraska. So we came back to Enterprise, and we've been there ever since.
Okay, let me go back to the 2 semesters that you were at University of Utah.
Okay.
So what was, did you have any influential mentors?
Yes, Fern Reeves was the one that asked me to apply for the University of Utah scholarship. She knew I wanted to go there because my dad and my grandfather had both graduated from the U. And so she was very instrumental in getting me that scholarship. I couldn't have gone without a scholarship. My dad had to sell 2 cows to pay for my boarding room at Carlson Hall.
Carlson Hall, okay. So what were your successes, accomplishments, challenges, or frustrations during those 2 semesters that you were there?
Well, one of my accomplishments is that I overcame my fear of water and learned how to swim and passed the Red Cross swimming test. They required that of freshman women if they had no handicaps. And it was interesting, the man that taught me that only had 1 arm. And he was the best swimmer I ever knew.
Wow. Describe how you met your husband Morris and when you married.
I met my husband Morris at a picnic at Twin Lakes in Las Vegas, Nevada, when I was down there working that summer to go back to college.
Twin Lakes what? What was
Resort.
that? Resort.
It was a big spring and a big swimming pool. The area is still out on the west side of Vegas. I don't know quite how it is now. I haven't been there for many years.
But what was it like then?
Oh, it was a big swimming pool, about 3 times the size of Vail, and there were shade trees and water running in ditches like creeks.
Okay, so were you visiting there? You were
a group of
working?
people that I was working with had decided they wanted to take a picnic out to Twin Lakes. Some of the girls, and I'm sure it was instituted in the party, knew a group of GIs that came in from the base, and Morris was in there.
So
when I met him, it was like, oh, there you are.
So was he working for Nellis Air Force Base?
Oh, he was in the
time?
Air Force.
He was in the Air Force. Okay, so
at that time he was a staff sergeant in the Air Force.
Okay, so the one time you met, then what happened after that?
Well, I missed the bus to go back to my job, and so he took me back, and I never went with anyone else, and I know he didn't. We both instant chemistry.
Okay, so when and where did you get married?
The first time we got married, Morris came up, and there had been a big housing shortage in Vegas, and you had to be on lists to get housing. And our wedding date was the 20th of November, and on the last weekend in
What year was this?
1953.
Okay.
The last weekend in October, he came up to see me, and he was very sad. And he said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I can't even apply for housing until I have a marriage license. And how long after that? Oh, about 6 weeks. Well, we were going to go to Nebraska to meet his folks for 2 weeks, so that would have been about 6 weeks. And LaRue had a brainstorm, and I said, how would you like to get married tonight? So we had a marriage license so he could apply for base housing.
Where did you get married?
We got married in Pioche, Nevada.
In Pioche, Nevada.
Rex Bentley married us, and we didn't tell my folks. We just thought we would continue to go ahead with the wedding we had planned at the church, and he was not LDS, so we just were going to the church. And I didn't tell my mother, but while we were in Nebraska visiting his folks, a letter came from the county recorder of Lincoln County, Nevada to me, and she wondered what it was, and she opened it, and it was our marriage license, and she was mad.
So what happened? So then you got married again?
We got married twice. I told Morris if he ever divorced me, he'd have to divorce me twice.
So the second time you got married, where was that?
In Enterprise at the church.
Okay.
Bishop Leland Huntsman officiated, and we were, I think, probably the second people that had the reception in the new church, which is now the Stake Center.
So did you have a marriage license in Nevada and a marriage license in Utah?
I had a marriage license in Nevada and one in Utah.
Okay, so...
See, life wasn't much different then than it is now.
Yeah. So describe and list any children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, if any.
I had 3 sons. Dwight, who's a truck driver, a rancher, and a store. He owns the convenience store in Enterprise. And then I have Paul, who did very well for Union Pacific Railroad. He ended up as a director of maintenance of Way of the Western United States, and he lives in Florida in the winter and Grace, Idaho in the summer. And he was very successful financially. And then my youngest son, who was my bonus baby, I carried him when I was 5 months pregnant and had uterine cancer. And I did get him. I didn't do an abortion. I won't do that. But anyway, Paul lives in Fruit Heights, Utah. His wife is very successful. She is one of the vice presidents in American Express, and they adopted 2 children, 2 black children, and I found out I can love those kids maybe more than I love my others because they can sing and dance.
Wow. So how many grandchildren do you have?
I have 12 grandchildren.
And great-grandchildren?
I have 28 greats.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if you worked, where did you work and what were your duties?
Well, I did a lot, when I was young, I did a lot of waiting tables, fry cooking, and working in cafes. I started when I was 14. I worked for George Tate in Enterprise. He taught me how to make the best chicken fried steak he ever made.
Okay.
And then I worked at the Crossroads, Burl Crossroads, for Fifes. And
for who?
For Fifes. He was Iron County Sheriff.
Did you say Fifes?
Fife, F-I-F-E. He was Iron County Sheriff for a long time. His brother's name was Wilford, and I've lost his name.
Okay, so this was Crossroads Equipment Company, which was farm equipment.
This was the Crossroads Cafe.
Oh, Crossroads Cafe.
Right at the
just
Crossroads.
right there at the junction.
And it burned, and it's been rebuilt.
Okay, that was at the junction of Burl and Newcastle, basically.
Well, 56 and 18.
56 and 18, okay. So how long did you work there?
Oh, probably a couple of years. And then I went to work for George Snow at the theater as a cashier in Enterprise the rest of my high school years. And in the summer, I would wait tables during the day. My senior year, I went to Bryce and worked as a cabin maid at Bryce Canyon.
At Bryce Canyon National Park, okay.
Yeah, and...
did you do any of the farewells, go out and do the farewells?
Now that we're all done dragging your baggage from your cabin, we will put our drivers on the dray. And Bryce and Grandad Zion bid you all goodbye and hope you come another day.
And that was
that was one of the sing-away.
What was that called? The
Utah
sing-away.
Parks.
Utah Parks Company that you worked for. Oh my gosh. Okay. So where else?
And then from there, I went to college and I worked with my sister at the interval room, which is a diet kitchen at the LDS hospital, to help pay for costs there. And from when I went home that spring, I asked Lamar Snyder, who was manager, if I could be a waitress. And he said, we've already filled our wait schedule and you'll have to do, and that wasn't enough money. You have to do cabin maid. You make money at waitressing. So I went to Vegas and lived with my aunt, and that's when I met Morris.
Okay. So when you got married, you also worked, right?
I didn't work the first year.
Okay.
I was in Vegas, and there really weren't too many jobs available, and because of all of the gals that worked, the base was just exploding. It was during the Korean, and they were the big training base.
And your husband was doing what in the Air Force?
He was in supply. He instituted the supply system that is still being used today. He patterned it after John Deere, where he had worked in high school. And he pretty much straightened up
Mm-hmm.
mess that they had when he first got there.
Okay. How long did you live in Las Vegas?
We lived there a little better than a year.
Than a year. And then you moved to Enterprise.
No, we moved to Nebraska.
Oh, Nebraska. Where
We
in Nebraska?
spent 2 years. Platte County, north of Genoa and east of St. Ed. And you probably don't know where
Nebraska.
those are, but
I don't.
you know where Columbus is?
I don't.
Grand Island?
Yes.
Grand Island, we were east of Grand Island, about
Okay.
40
Doing what?
miles. My husband was leasing a farm from his aunt, and it was in 1955 and 56, and they were some of the 2 driest years Nebraska's ever experienced. We dried out, there were no jobs, so we came back to Utah because there were jobs in Utah.
Okay. So where in Utah?
Enterprise.
Enterprise.
My
Doing
dad
what?
Morris went to work for Willard Randall, a farmer in the valley.
Okay. And what did he do?
Everything. Plowed, harvested potatoes,
Drove truck?
drove truck. He did it. He was just general handyman for Bud.
Okay.
Bud had a huge farm at that time. The Randall farms were big.
They did. Did you do any work other than, or were you a
At that time,
full-time
I
homemaker?
sorted potatoes, but I had 2 little kids. Mostly I stayed home with my 2 little boys.
Okay, so tell us about the sorting of the potatoes, and when did you do that? Was that during the summer, right?
Oh, I did that off and on all my life.
Okay.
Sorting potatoes was a fall job, and we all worked at it because potatoes were big in Enterprise at that time.
Okay. So, how many years did Morris work for Willard Randall?
Probably 3.
3 years. And then,
Not quite 3.
then did he go to work for the Forest Service?
No, he went to work for Barlocker Farms.
Okay.
And he worked
Is that
for
Bill Barlocker?
Bill Barlocker's farms,
We're talking
raising
turkeys?
turkeys
Raising turkeys.
and-
in Enterprise.
in Enterprise.
Okay.
And he worked for them for about a year, almost 2 years, and then he went into construction with Urban Truman, his co-worker at Barlocker Farms. We could see that Bill was not doing well and it wouldn't last, and so he went to work in construction, building houses. Spent about 2 years there. In fact, the metal hangers up on the Black Hill were some that he put in.
Okay.
He sold the city of St. George those Balin hangers, and then he installed them.
And after that, did he go to work for the Forest
Then
Service?
he worked to work for the Forest
Okay,
Service.
so tell us a little bit about the Forest Service. Which district or
He was
Was he working?
on D1 because that was the Enterprise District, was D1. It was the furthest west.
so the Enterprise District of Dixie National
Dixie
Forest,
National
U.S.
Forest.
Forest Service.
And while he was working for them, then it was blended with D2, which was here in Pine Valley and St. George, and they
Okay.
became one.
And his duties were?
General maintenance, trail maintenance. He built a lot of trails, reclaimed a lot of springs, built a lot of fences. That's what he generally did. He was the general district assistant.
But he also served on fires when called upon,
Well,
right?
that was part of his job. He worked fires in the summer, and for a long time, for several years, he just went on fires and ran fire crews, because they would have a lot of young men that would come and work for him during the summer, and they trained them for the fire, and then when they were called, they would go.
Well, what kind of influence do you think Morris had on those young men?
I know
working
he
in
had
the
tremendous
forest
influence
fires?
because I have had feedback from them for years about what Morris had done for them. Morris almost was a father figure to a lot of young men.
Okay. When did you get involved with the Cottonwood Inn and restaurant and
When
convenience store?
Morris retired, you knew Morris, and when Morris retired, he didn't sit around. He looked for something to do, and he told me, he says, I've always wanted to build a convenience store after they started building them. And he had had an inheritance from an aunt, an inheritance from his mother. And between those and my annuity, which we cashed in, we built Cottonwood.
Okay, so tell us about, and you were actively involved in that, right?
Oh, yeah.
You worked there too.
Yeah.
So tell us about what you did.
Well,
Both of you
I
did.
kept the books at night because I taught school during the day. Morris worked there during the day, and then he stayed with me until closing. But we would close the store together, and after the other help had gone home, and I kept the books.
sounds like I need to backtrack a little bit. So you were raising two children initially.
Well, at this time, the kids were all in high school or
okay.
grade
And
school.
then somewhere along the line, you went to begin teaching school?
When I had cancer, and I knew there would be no more children, and I had wanted 12 children, I knew there wouldn't be any more. I looked around and I found out that I enjoyed doing substitute teaching, especially for high school. And so when my youngest went to kindergarten, I went back to school and got my degree.
And what year was that you got your degree?
I got my degree, let's see, in 1972. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at that.
So about 1972.
Yeah.
And then you applied to become a substitute teacher in
No,
the enterprise?
after I had been substituting before then, just
okay.
on part-time basis, because my kids were pretty much raised, and I had my mother that would help me, and so I had substituted, and I knew that I liked high school much better than elementary. So when I went back to school, I thought, this is a career I could blend with being a mother and also make some money. And I enjoyed it. I loved teaching, and I enjoyed the kids. I like high school age kids.
So what year did you begin teaching full-time? You taught full-time now at Enterprise High School, teaching English?
Yes.
What year was that?
I started, let's see, I retired in 98, 24 years, 74.
In 1974, you started teaching. And you taught for 24 years? Tell us about those experiences.
I taught high school English, consumers economics, and drama and speech and journalism and reading.
Did you do the yearbook?
I did the yearbook, I did the school paper, I did competitive speech, I did competitive drama, and my kids were very successful. I was extremely proud, and a lot of them have let me know that the experience with speech especially had changed their lives, and they thanked me for I've had many thank me for seeing that they could do debate and competitive speech. Why Utah does not make speech part of the English curriculum, I don't know, but they should.
Wow. Okay. So what other civic or community or religious organizations did you participate in, if any?
My husband and I participated in Lions Club. We were both very active with the PTA. I served on the city council for one term, found out that the little town politics are as corrupt as big town politics, and decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I did run, and I did get defeated.
Oh, you ran.
But I didn't try very hard either.
So wait a minute, did you serve a term, did you say?
Yes, I served a term.
Was that 2 years or 4 years? Okay.
And I was instrumental in the last time Enterprise improved its water system, but it was only supposed to be up to 20 and only with 2% growth. I don't know what the city of Enterprise is doing right now for water, but I'm sure they're having some problems.
So what years did you serve as a city councilwoman?
It was in the 90s, and I don't remember.
Okay.
I'd have to look that up.
So you said it was corrupt. There was some corruption.
Oh, hey, the good old boy was in force in Enterprise, just like it was in St. George with the Rebbers and the Dutchmen. You know what went on.
Was there any, did you feel like there was ever any kind of discrimination against women serving on the city council?
Yeah. Can I give you an example?
Yes.
We were talking about quite a controversial issue, I don't even remember which, and I said, well, I think this, and the mayor looked at me and he says, we don't care what you think. Okay.
Who was the mayor?
Morley Wilson.
Wow.
He said, we don't care what you think. Okay. But it wasn't 2 minutes, and he said, I think, and I looked at him and said, Mayor, why do you think I care what you think? Big silence. I was not supposed to speak to the mayor that way. It was all right for him to speak to me that way, but it was not all right for me to return the favor.
Wow. Well, okay, so what other experiences with these organizations stand out for you? Whether the city council or teaching or...
I enjoyed the city council, but can I tell you why I decided they were corrupt?
Yes.
One day I was working on some paperwork for the water project we were doing, and I wanted it for the city council meeting that night. Went in to have it ran off, and the girls were really busy, and I said, well, I don't know how to run this thing. Do you want me to do it? And they said, yes. Well, while I was running it off, here was the time card right above the deal. So Snoopy, old LaRue, she reached over and picked up a time card. 3 men, 3 days, building 1 steel post driver. I had just bought one for $29 at the local hardware store. That's why I decided that there was too much graft in all levels of government.
Okay. What other contributions do you feel like that you've made to the community of Enterprise in Washington County or elsewhere?
Well, I belong to the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers, and I taught lessons, and I think I got a lot of people interested in their heritage because I loved history so much, and I did PTA work, and I did it. When I was a teacher, I spent my life teaching, and I think that's probably the biggest impact I made, though I think that I also made an impact on the city council.
Okay. Did you serve as a docent there, like a volunteer with the Daughters of Utah Pioneers?
Oh,
with,
yeah.
I think they have, at that time they had the DUP building that was open?
Yes.
Okay. What was that like? Did you serve as a volunteer there at all?
Well,
when it was open?
I was a co-captain there for, Mary Ellen and I were co-captains for 8 years. I think that's all they let us be.
And what was that like for you?
Oh, I enjoyed it. Mary Ellen was lovely to work with, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot about the history of the whole state of Utah, the whole situation, and I feel like I taught a lot.
Okay.
And that's one thing I did in church. I was relief society teacher for quite a number of years for the literature lessons when they used to do those. And I did drama directing. I bet I wrote 25 road shows. I haven't got a copy of one of them.
And did you write any kind of histories? Any?
I haven't.
Okay.
I should have, but I haven't.
Okay. So as you look back over your life, what would you like to be remembered for?
A good teacher, a good mother.
Okay. Is there anything else that you feel is important that I haven't asked you that you would like to tell us about?
Well, I'm very proud of some of my ancestors, and I think you need to do a thing on the Enterprise building in the Enterprise Big Reservoir. There's a lot of pictures around. There's the Reservoir and Canal Company minutes, and there's even a lot of history. And I think I gave you a history of Enterprise, didn't I?
I'm not sure.
I might not have done. If I didn't, by Joseph Fish. I needed to if I didn't.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, we want to thank LaRue Dannelly for being here with us. I really appreciate her and her contributions to the community. And again, we want to thank you, the listener and the viewers out there, for being with us today here at the Washington County Historical Society Oral History Interview. This is we want to thank the Community Education Channel Studios, the staff here for videotaping this interview, and until we see you next time, thank you so much for joining us.